Hey guys, we're going to go over one of the passages from a book, passage called Well-Worn Jacket. So hopefully you have it in front of you and can look at it and go through it with me. Okay, let's just start with a general discussion of the ACT. When you take the reading test, you've just had a break. Hopefully you've had a snack, you've used the restroom, and you come back. Now you've been testing in the testing room for over 2 hours probably, and testing for almost 2 hours. When you start the reading test, you have to be ready for it. The questions on the ACT reading fall into two basic categories: reference and inference. And so the questions, generally two passages, tend more towards inference, prose fiction, or literary narrative. It's always passage one, and passage three, humanities. I generally think humanities has more challenging questions. They're scattered more around the text. It's a little more, generally more challenging, not always. And the other end of the spectrum is natural science, which tends more towards reference. And there are different ways to approach each of these passages, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Well, the first thing you need to know, though, is that every answer can be supported from the text. This passage is from another one of the texts we're using in class from your book. So you don't have to have this one in front of you. I'm just going to go over it. Summers in Alabama had always been hot. My childhood memories are filled with days spent floating in the pines, sitting on the porch swing, lying sprawled out in front of any source of moving air, trying in vain to get and stay cool. When I walked out of the airport, already tired from a 3-hour flight that had been delayed by over half an hour, laden with suitcases and dressed for an overly air conditioned office climate, the heat came over me like a blanket. An old, unwashed woolen blanket that had been soaked in water, allowed to dry, crumpled on the floor, then re soaked and thrown at me in all its mildew glory. The short walk to the car rental agency felt like a trek through the jungle. By the time I got to my rental, my shirt was soaked through in patches, my hair was limp and sticky, and my mood was foul. I just like that passage. I like the description in it. But this question is a really interesting one. The narrator considers the weather in Alabama during the summertime to be humid and extremely hot, unbearably hot and miserable, cool and breezy, or pleasantly familiar. I think we could probably eliminate cool and breezy unless if you only read the first two sentences, which is a strategy we're going to talk about later. But if you stop there, you might have accidentally picked that one, right? You're laying on the porch swing. If you just see the word cool, you might pick cool and breezy because you're not paying attention. Pleasantly familiar, this passage is actually called Going Home. So if you went by the title, you might say pleasantly familiar. But most would say it can't be H or J. So how do we choose between humid and extremely hot and unbearably hot and miserable? Those are pretty close, right? Now we could go, well, what is humidity? Humidity is the moisture in the air. And so we have this section here, which talks about the unwashed, unwoolen blanket that had been soaked in water. That sounds humid, but really it comes down to the answer is G because of this word unbearable. The word unbearable literally means you cannot bear it. This person did not die. They did not turn around and go back home. And so the answer has to be F, humid and extremely hot, because she is able to bear it. There are really three ways to approach the passage. Way number one is to read and answer. This is the best way if you have time. I do this strategy on every single passage, but I'm a relatively fast reader. If you're going to use this, you need to be able to read consistently at 280 words per minute if you plan to finish the test. Now, you may want to cut a passage. You don't need to do that. Google summary and answer. This is kind of the same way. You're going to read at a little faster rate than you're comfortable. You're going to look at the whole thing. Skim rehending. You're going to make a note, 1 to 3 words about what you just read in each paragraph. Either helps you to focus, or if you have trouble remembering what you read, it's a good strategy. Map and answer we'll talk more about when we do a natural science passage. Generally works better on the reference and the inference passages. But if we go back to the question we just did, right? If you're just mapping this one, you would have just gotten the first sentence or two, topic sentence, and you might have accidentally picked H or J because you weren't paying attention. So mapping has some great limitations. Let's get back into the passage we're working on, Well-Worn Jacket. If you haven't done so already, read the the text, time yourself, see how long it takes you because you want to know that, and Google summary. Google summary the passage as you go. Okay, here's mine. My first paragraph is Monique excited to try out. I'm gonna circle, underline, usually box names to know what's going on. That's really kind of important in the prose fiction passages, just to know the name. So I'll put excited to try out. Paragraph 2, I put M for Monique, confidence. You hear my dog in the background. And then the next paragraph, I put song choice. That's what it's all about. Volunteer order. So Monique is volunteering to go first, just talking about the order. Monique goes first. Monique's royal court, her friends sitting there making fun of others. Esperanza. So we have a new character that appears around line 45. Awkward Esperanza. So we talks about her not being accepted well. Esperanza homework. Ridicule for the next one. And then the next one we get into, she was methodical, but she was great. So you could have just written E, great. And then E, great performance again. And the last one was Monique's out, Esperanza in. So here's what my passage looks like when I got done not mapping it, Google summary in it. Main characters highlighted. I probably could have highlighted royal court, and then one to three words describing each paragraph. Okay, so now let's get into the questions. Question 1, it can be reasonably inferred from the passage that Monique believed the song she chose from her audition. So where would song choice be in this paragraph here, right? So she'd already sung her audition song an hour, commencing the day's ceremonies. This year, Monique used God Bless the Child. So we know what this is going to be, right? So would be most inspiring Rodgers and Hammerstein number she could choose? Well, most inspiring, we don't know that for sure. Most sophisticated song in Billie Holiday's repertoire? Not necessarily, but C is supported by the text. Billie Holiday's version of it was familiar mostly to adults, and even then, mostly to the adults of the previous generation, would be more recognizable to Monique than her friends, parents than to her friends because it's more recognizable to the previous generation. So, okay, number 2. The passage initially portrays Monique and her friends as. So where are we going to find Monique and her friends? Well, we know we're going to see them here, right? They're sitting in the back holding royal court. So concerned and nervous, maybe her friends, but not Monique, because we have Monique in there too. Confused and surprised, not initially. At the end of the text, yes. Friendly and inclusive, no. They're in the back making fun of everyone. So it has to be aloof and disparaging. They're sitting in the back with her royal court of friends and admirers. Number 3, according to the narrator, what did Esperanza do prior to singing the Star Spangled Banner? So where we're going to find this, we see it in this paragraph here, right? She's been sitting alone, doing her homework before she went up and sang the Star Spangled Banner, and Miss Dominguez is worried about her. This one's tricky. Most students will miss this question because they're going to say she finished her geometry homework. But if we actually look, it doesn't say finished. She's only working on her homework. We have no idea if she's finished, and every answer has to be supported by the text. But it does say she did not look up until she was there, and even then only looked at Miss Dominguez. So if you kept reading and paid attention, you knew where to find it. But if you just stopped at line 2, you got this one wrong. All right, the main purpose of the statement in line 29. So we got to find line 29, which is going to be down here. Okay, Monique often, no, right here. This year, Monique decided to make a show of her self-confidence. This little bar is annoying. Of self-confidence. Okay, so what is Monique doing? You hear my dog barking. He's telling us. Inform the reader that students' fears of going first were largely a thing in the past. This is fascinating what ACT does here. They put this apostrophe after the S. If it had said the student, apostrophe S, the student's fears, it could have been Monique, but not all students' fears were a thing in the past. Present why this year's audition was strange as yet. There's no evidence for that. Suggests that Monique's imagination no longer involved the same imagery. No, it's really just to offer a contrast between Monique's choice of audition and others. She's doing self-confidence to go first. Others don't have self-confidence. Okay, number 5, it can be reasonably inferred from the passage that Esperanza Solito was teased more than anyone else at her school. So if we look, we're going to see that we know that she was one of the most awkward students at Thornton. We know that Miss Dominguez thought she might be ridiculed, but that doesn't mean she was teased more than anyone else. We don't know. The only thing we can know for sure is that Monique is sitting at the back and Esperanza is sitting alone in the front. So the only inference here is that auditoriums are big. And because we know auditoriums are big, they can't be sitting close together, so it has to be B. Esperanza was not sitting near Monique and her friends. So it's not a real inference, it's just kind of an inference. According to the passage, Monique figured that volunteering to perform God Bless the Child as the first audition of the day. We kind of already had this same question, right? We know about where it's going to be. We have her confidence or seniority. She's going first. She's volunteering to go first. We know it's going to be over here. We just have to find for sure where it is. Such a defiantly fearless act, she had figured, would probably instill even more fear into her competition. So instilling fear make the others feel they can't compete. So G. 7, according to the passage, when Esperanza Solito got to the climax of the Star Spangled Banner, she did what? So the climax is actually on the next page, and I include the next one. Or did I? Nope, I didn't. So in this one, it's going to be, it's around line 80. By the way, this is a fairly long passage. Most AC passages are 90 words at the most. This one's right at it. What did she do? Well, she was calm. We know that, right? She has a calm resonance. So it can't be A, it's not C. All we know is she could be heard throughout the auditorium, right? So her voice filled the room. So D. The passage states that Miss Dominguez suspected Esperanza audition could. We kind of already answered that one, right? When we were talking about earlier, what's the inference? We know Miss Dominguez thought she could be ridiculed, so was vulnerable to ridicule, so F. Number 9, which of the following details is used to describe how Monique and her friends respond to hearing the audition? So this is the end again, right? So how do they do? They're expectant smiles of mockery, quickly vanishing from the faces of all who listened, right? Don't you feel good? Like Esperanza is doing well, Monique's not. Monique kind of gets what's coming to her. The passage strongly suggests that Esperanza's choice of audition material was, well, even if we think about this, Star Spangled Banner, not good for a mousy voice if you know the Star Spangled Banner. An impressive original choice? No, it says in there that's not original. I don't remember where that is, but I remember it saying it's not an original choice. Something Monique and her friends had anticipated? No. Only thing we know for sure that's supported by the text is it's often sung with vibrato, right? That's all we know for sure, that can be supported by the text. Okay, so you got to find the strategy that works best for you at the speed you're comfortable moving. Read and answer or Google summary and answer are the two that work here. Always answer, of course. So read or read in Google summary, whichever works best. If you're fast enough, of course, you read. If not, you Google summary. So we'll do several more of these in class, but I wanted you to have one on video you can look back at.